Euphoria Season 2 looks completely different from Season 1, and while you may not like the way the story ends, you definitely can't question that this season looks unique. But why? In this video, we're going to dive into what makes Season 2 of Euphoria more intriguing than Season 1, and furthermore, more intriguing than anything else on TV right now. Let's dive right into it. The first thing I want to talk about is, what was it shot on? Season 2 of Euphoria was shot on 35mm Kodak Vision 3 500T 5219, as well as 35mm Ektachrome 100D 5294. Parts of it was also shot on 16mm Kodak Vision 3 500T 7219, and the cameras used were the Aricam LT as well as the Ariflex 416. This was shot by director and creator Sam Leviston, as well as DP Marcell Rev. They spoke a little bit about their vision for the show and what they wanted the show to feel like.
The biggest fear was that we were going to go back and do the same thing. So despite, kind of how popular the look of Euphoria was, I wanted to create something that still had the heart and soul of Euphoria, but it looks different and it feels different. If Season 1 was sort of a house party at 2 a.m., Season 2 should feel like 5 a.m., way past the point in which everyone should have gone home.
Season 1 was like a very in-the-moment, very present feel to it. This feels like some sort of memory of high school, I think. Just emotionally, film felt like the right choice.
We had reached out to Kodak to see if they could remake Ektachrome for us, because we both loved that film stock. And they ended up, converting their factory in order to remake Ektachrome for 35. It just looks absolutely beautiful.
Ektachrome is one of those film stock that is just rich in color, and I'm sure you must have noticed it that the colors this season look completely different than anything you may have seen on TV recently, and that's due to the work of colorist Tom Poole, who works at a company 3, and I've spoken about Tom Poole on this channel before, but he's one of the best colorists in the world. Check out his page, check out his work, and give him a follow if you like what he does. The film was processed and scanned out of PhotoCam, and all of these play an instrumental role in bringing the look and feel of Season 2 of Euphoria to life. Now I'm going to jump into Davinci Resolve, and we're going to break down some of the interesting things that I noticed when watching the show, and we're going to talk about what it may look like for you to create this look in whatever projects you're working on. Let's jump right into it. There are 5 main things I'm going to touch upon when it comes to the stills from this show, and forgive me if this isn't a little too structured. I might be bouncing around from stills to stills, showing you what I mean when I'm talking about these 5 things. The 5 things I want to talk about are contrast, colors, grain, blacks, and the film feel. Let's talk about contrast first. So if you watch the show, you may have noticed how deep the blacks are in some certain scenes, right? And that is by design. If you take a look at the scopes down here, you will notice high contrast is basically the difference between the highest points and the lowest points. Now you can see the difference in this particular shot right here. May not seem like too much, but it is a lot, especially in the reds. And there's always a lot of, to jump a little bit into color, there is a lot of tungsten tones, tungsten colors in a lot of the indoor scenes in Euphoria, and that is by design. As I said, this show was shot a lot on the Kodak 500T film stock, and you see it all the way through, right? We have this shot right here of, what's her name? I forget her name. You have this shot right here of Rue, and you have Jules right here, and you see the deep contrast in these 2 scenes, especially this one. You have your bright yellows all the way up here, and you have your deep shadows down here, right? The contrast here is so much. Take a look at what I see here at the top and the bottom here as well. And also take note that these are not stills directly from the show. These are just stills that I found online, so they may not be exactly accurate. So those contrast levels are pretty high, right? And let's jump into another scene. Here we have my boy Fez. Hopefully he's okay. Again, indoor scene, you have bright yellows, dark shadows, right? And that also brings us into the blacks. The blacks in this show are really, really deep blacks, right? Even in this shot right here, it's almost like they filmed everything at night. Apart from the daylight scenes, I feel like most of this show was shot at night due to the deep contrast, due to the deep blacks, and due to the way the colors are seen. Now this one as well too, this is my boy Kyle. Actually, he's not my boy, he's pretty messed up, but at the same time too, this shot, you have your deep blacks, and they have a blue tone in this scene. And that's also another thing with the colors, right? While most of it was tungsten yellow colors, there are a lot of colors in a lot of different scenes, right? This scene right here, you see a lot of red. This is when she is trying to break up with her boyfriend for no reason. She comes up with so many different reasons to break up with him, but she's like, oh, I'm ill. But as I was saying, the deep colors that exist within this show carry on through, and this comes through in the production design, this comes through in the costume design, comes through in the overall feeling that the creators wanted for this entire season. I have this shot in right here because this is the scene where Kyle goes to the bar, but I love this entire scene because of the way the lights are hitting the scene. You have your reds, you have your blues, and this is a deviation from what most of the show looks like. So it shows to create some sort of different world, some sort of different feeling, some sort of different vibe to what's going on in this scene. You have this scene right here, right? This is one of my favorite shots from the show, and this shows three of the main things I wanted to talk about. This shows the deep contrast. You have the outside scenes going on here, and then the light comes from outside. You have your deep blacks, and you have your high contrast. The contrast is pretty steep, right? That's just the way most of the show looks like. You have your deep colors, you have your contrast, you have your deep blacks, and you have grain. Grain is another thing I wanted to talk about. Depending on the scene, depending on the shots, you may not even notice how much grain is on the show, except you're watching for it. There isn't much grain, it's pretty smooth, but the grain is there because 35mm doesn't have too much grain on the film stock, doesn't have too much grain on the film in general, but it is there if you're looking for it. It's active, it creates a certain feeling, it creates a certain vibe on the show, and it's one of those main things that goes into creating the look and feel of film. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the feeling that film gives to the entire show. Right, film is, as you know, on this channel I've spoken about grain, and I'm going to be talking about a lot more when it comes to film, so feel free to subscribe if you want to talk about film a little bit more. But film gives you something that digital cannot, and what that is it gives you that nostalgic feeling, it gives you that feeling of timelessness, it gives you that feeling of a memory. And the way this show is structured, it's being told from people's points of views. And sometimes it could feel like they're telling you something that has already happened, right? They're telling you something from their memory. And if there's one thing that film does, is give you that feeling of memory, gives you that feeling of timelessness, and it gives you that feeling of something that's happening in a world that you're not privileged to be a part of. And that's what Euphoria is. It's like, this is not real world, but this is a world that we feel like could be real. And it's something that film does a lot to create that feeling. It does a lot to create that vibe. It does a lot to add to the story and create the world that we see in Euphoria Season 2. I applaud the filmmakers for choosing film. I applaud everyone that went into creating this season, that went into creating this show, that went into making us fall in love with these characters, because you did a great job. Now that brings us to the end of this video. If this video has brought you any value, please make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to my channel, as this goes a very long way to making sure I produce more content like this. Until next time, make sure you stay safe, make sure you stay coloring, and I'll see you in the next video, man. Bye. And don't forget to shoot film, shoot film, shoot film.